What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Halas Hangover. We are 4-star Chicago sports. I got Kyle Duplessis right next to me, Brandon Duplessis right below me. What up, gentlemen? How we doing tonight?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
Doing all right,
Brandon, good to see you. Listen, we don't have a lot to go off of right now. I mean, it's a very dead news cycle, so we're just gonna kind of bullshit our way through this, but we're here to fuck shit up. We're gonna have some fun. And if you got anything to throw in the chat, anything you want to talk about, any questions you have, we will pontificate on it. So hopefully you guys are engaged and participating. What up, breaking news, Bruce? Appreciate you joining us. You're the man as always. You got questions, Bruce? You got comments? Throw them in there, please. Help us keep this conversation going tonight in a dead news cycle of Chicago Bears information, NFL in general. Kyle, there is a little bit of news that's come out NFL-wise. You want to touch on some of that stuff? Maybe we got some nuggets in there.
Yeah, so multiple people are reporting now that it sounds like Joey Bosa is going to be a cap casualty for the Los Angeles Chargers, which means we're going to start to hear all the Bears fans on social media and all the experts start to hint at the fact that maybe that could be a possibility for the Bears. He's 29 years old. He's played a possible 58 games. He's played like 26. So he's had a lot of injury problems since joining the NFL. But if he's cheap, a one-year deal, and the Bears are desperate, probably something they could consider. Another thing that people keep on talking about is it seems that the Bengals are going to do everything in their power to keep T. Higgins in Cincinnati, which means that the likelihood of a guy like Trey Hendrickson becoming available is probably going to go up. I think it's what's strange to me, guys. Maybe you guys can give me your opinion here. Why is it almost all of the stud defensive ends in the NFL right now are all of a sudden like available for trade? I mean, we've heard about Trey Hendrickson, we've heard about Myles Garrett, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack. I mean, it seems like this free agency class for defensive ends is going to be the most stacked free agency class in the last 20 years. But you're not hearing this stuff about left tackles. You're not hearing about wide receivers. You're not hearing about running backs. It just seems to be defensive ends. You guys think there's something to that?
It's their age, man. It's their age. Their teams that they're currently on do not want to shell out big contracts for. I mean, Trey Hendrickson is older than Myles Garrett. Trey Hendrickson is 30 years old.
Yeah, he's the oldest of the bunch.
He's going to command a lot of money on the open market when he hits it, or if he wants to redo a deal with the Bengals and the Bengals want to keep him, it's going to cost them. So, and the Bengals are in a precarious cap position. The Browns are in a precarious cap position. These guys need to make moves to add youth to their teams, So, a team that can go for a guy like that could benefit greatly in terms of value from that. I think. I mean, that it's something that every team that considers themselves a potential contender should consider if these guys are available.
Well, what's funny is even when the Micah Parsons news came out that the Cowboys would possibly be open to trading him, I was like, yeah, that's all speculation, all hearsay. But man, you go look at their salary cap situation and you consider the fact that they now have the highest paid quarterback and highest paid receiver in the NFL. It's going to be tough for them to find a way to keep Micah Parsons. I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm not saying they shouldn't. I think Micah Parsons should have been at the top of their priority list, but man, they're going to have to restructure some contracts for sure.
You know who the highest paid defensive end in football is and what their salary is per year?
I know it's not Myles Garrett.
It's the other Bosa brother, Nick Bosa in San Francisco, and he's making $34 million a year.
Yeah, it should be. It should be. It should be Garrett, Bosa, and Watt should be the top three defensive ends.
Micah it's always the next guy up. So Brandon, Micah Parsons is going to get more than that. If we're talking about these defensive ends and their potential availability, people say they're too expensive. But what do you think about, targeting a guy like Hendrickson or Garrett if you're a team like the Bears that wants to throw their hat in the ring of competitiveness?
I love it, Dustin, because like you and I have stated, I don't think these guys become available all that. I mean, Trey Hendrickson to me is an entire, and I know he just led the league in sacks, but he's, I think, a tier below a Myles Garrett, if you ask me, but it has to come at the right cost. You can't get gutted by some team just because you need an edge rusher when you could potentially find one somewhere cheap or even in the draft.
Yeah, guys, real quick. Sean Lugo, our other co-host, is in the building. Thanks for joining us, my man. We got James Kelfier. What up? Scott Angel's in here as well. Appreciate y'all. Like I said, y'all got topics, stuff you want to talk about, throw it in there. Please hit that like button. Sure, you're all subscribed, but share it with a friend. And if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, get the notification so you can check with us. So, I mean, the T. Higgins thing is also interesting because this wide receiver market for the NFL come free agency and potential trades could get interesting too. You got the Tyreek Hill situation in Miami. T. Higgins was supposed to be the best receiver available, but if he gets franchised and he's not available, that kind of messes up the market a little bit. If we were looking at it through a Bears lens, guys, is there anybody out there receiver-wise that you think the Bears should consider adding in this offseason?
I would have said Cooper Kupp if he was a free agent. If he was a free agent, I would have no problem with the Bears kicking the tires on Cooper Kupp and putting him in the slot and seeing if he's got anything left. But the fact that he's only available via trade, and the Bears are going to have to A, give up draft capital, and B, have to eat a big chunk of that salary. That I think it's $26 million he's owed this year. I just don't think it's worth it. I like Cooper Kupp. I think he's been one of the best players in the NFL over the last 10 seasons. But let's face it, guys, with all the recent injury history and all the stuff going on with him, we know for a fact that he is on the bitter end of his career here. I just don't think you can go out and pay a guy like that 16, 17, 18 million dollars. And we don't know how much the Rams expect teams to take of his salary. We know for a fact that the Rams have said they are going to be willing to eat a chunk of his salary in the trade. But how much, and then what do they want in return? Is it going to be one of those situations where we're like, hey, we just want this guy off our team. Give us a 6th round pick, call it a day, we'll move on. Or is this going to be like they're trying to get teams to give them more, buy high because of what he's done in the NFL in the last 10 years? I don't know. But for me personally, guys, I've heard a lot of Bears fans saying that they would love the idea of Cooper Kupp in a Bears jersey. I just don't think the price is right for the Bears. Right now, the Bears are still considered to be in the middle of a rebuild, right? I mean, there's still a lot of work to do here, a lot.
The guy has lost a step. I mean, Cooper Kupp,
100%.
in terms of getting separation from a defensive back, that's not something I want anything to do with. I don't know that listen, we're building for sure, but you can get competitive pretty quickly in the NFL. Brandon, anybody receiver-wise that comes to mind? Cooper Kupp is a no. Scott Angel said no, draft a wide receiver 3. He'd rather go that route. What are your thoughts, Brando?
Well, I agree. Kyle kind of said something that piques my interest. I mean, at what point do the Rams just want to dump this salary? And I think the longer Cooper Kupp's available, the cheaper he becomes in regards to what you need to trade for him. So if I'm the Bears and I'm interested in Cooper Kupp, I'm only going to play the wait and see game. But if I'm the Bears and I'm looking to add a receiver in free agency, guys, I'm probably just bringing the guy back who just spent the year here that Caleb has some familiarity with. But that's probably going to cost you too much as well. I'm a firm believer that this position is the most likely to hit in a mid-late round. I think this is if you've got some good scouting, like a Pat Bryant on Illinois, a guy you find in the 5th round that can make an impact on your team. And then what do the Bears need? Are you looking for a speedster in the slot? Are you looking for a separator? You know what I mean? Are you looking for a big guy? They don't really have anybody over. We don't have like a 6'5".
Darius, what up?
So depending on what the Bears are looking for, you can probably find it somewhere in the mid-round of the draft.
I love me some Pat Bryant. I love watching him at Illinois. Not a very good quarterback he was playing with. The guy makes spectacular contested catches. He gets up high to get the ball. He definitely wouldn't be a slot. He'd be more of an outside guy, and I guess you'd be moving a DJ Moore into the slot. Let me throw a little bit of a wrench in this and just throw out a name here because Deebo Samuel, guys, has asked to be traded. I mean, this is old news at this point, but nothing's happened since. The guy is the best yards after catch receiver in the NFL for the last 4 years. That's undebatable. It's not really close. George Kittle is there in that list as well. But, I mean, a guy like that brings an element to your offense that you don't really have right now. I think we got some yak players on this team, but not to the level of Deebo Samuel. His contract, I'm looking at it here, average salary, basically $24 million a year. That's his cap hit's going to be about that this year. Is he someone you would consider trading for if you weren't bringing back Allen? That would give you a DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Deebo Samuel receiving core for Caleb Williams to mess around with.
I like Deebo Samuel. I just don't like him at that price. And I have heard that the 49ers did give him the right to look for a trade. I mean, they are 100% willing to part ways with Deebo Samuel, especially since they just paid Brandon Ayuk. I think that probably is what made them so ready to do that. But I just don't like him at that price. Once again, his same as Cooper Kupp, if he was a free agent and the Bears could pay him what they want to pay him, 100%, I think Deebo Samuel would be awesome for the Chicago Bears. And it's not just what he does as a receiver.
He would go for more on the open market, Kyle. I do want to say that.
I mean, how old
he would
is
command more money.
How old is Deebo now? 31?
He's 29 years old. He's 29. So he's still in that good sweet spot.
Another problem with Deebo is he's dealt with injuries as well, guys. I mean, this is not a guy who plays. You wouldn't sign him expecting him to play all 17 games this season. He would be a guy you would expect to have there for at least somebody who has 12, 13 games. But I like Deebo Samuel. I like the skill set. I like what they do with him out of the backfield in particular, because there's just not many wide receivers who can do that, who can basically line up anywhere on the field and contribute to the team, contribute to the offense. But just because the Bears have so much invested in Rome Odunze as the number 9 pick and DJ Moore, who they just gave a 4-year extension to, who's going to be here for the next 5 years, I would focus on it for at least for the wide receiver 3 position and the slot. I would focus on the draft, or just trying to find somebody who's you can get on a relatively cheap deal. Another thing is, guys, are we ever is Tyler Scott just like, are we everybody out on Tyler Scott? Like, he's just not.
Before we move into that, you were talking about the draft. Sean points out Jack Beck, unique wide receiver, could be, he's definitely, I mean, he's a bigger dude, honestly. His skill set, it's pretty impressive for, his size and his speed combination. He could be a potential slot receiver for you, though. He had a great Senior Bowl week. There's a lot of good options in the draft, basically, is what that's saying, right? So that you could go with that,
especially in the slot.
Pitch this real quick. 2 players that I think still have some production left in them.
Plank, what up?
Our free agents this year. Brandon Cooks is available. The guy still burns. He's still got the step on most DBs. But a guy I really like, who was signed by the Tennessee Titans, and I just don't think they had a very efficient passing offense, or really offense in general, is Tyler Boyd, who I would have signed last year.
I loved him last year.
I still think as a number 3 with Caleb Williams throwing the ball, I think that guy can collect 500-600 yards.
Yeah, a lot of people have thrown out Tutu Atwell as well, another free agent potential slot receiver right here. A lot of Bears fans throwing that in. He's a speedster. He played well, and when he had to step up when other receivers got hurt, which happened often for the Rams. So, I mean, you're not looking for a guy that's going to blow your socks off. I think we saw the problem here with the Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze thing, was like you had this abundance of riches at receiver, and that handicapped you from addressing other spots, which kind of kept you from getting the ball to the receivers. Like you traded draft picks to add to this offensive line, and that didn't really add up. You traded draft picks for Keenan Allen. You spent the number 9 pick on Rome Odunze, but you didn't address your offensive line, so Caleb couldn't get him the ball with any kind of timing or confidence. So I think,
and that's the same argument I make to people. That's the same argument I make to people who keep saying Ashton Gianti at number 10. Like, you guys, what's the point of bringing one of the best running backs in the draft here if you don't have an offensive line to run behind? I mean, we saw DeAndre Swift. He spent over 4.2 yards per carry his entire career until he got to Chicago and dropped down to 3.7. If you don't have a good offensive line, it doesn't matter. Nothing will work if the offensive line isn't addressed. The Bears need to focus on that first. But certainly the names like we were just bringing up, Brandon, those are the type of guys I would expect the Bears to sign as a slot receiver. I wouldn't be looking at a Deebo Samuel, Cooper Kupp. I expect it to be somebody kind of under the radar, like a Brandon Cooks at the end of his career, Tutu Atwell, a guy like that who can still contribute. But like Dustin said, it's not somebody who's going to blow your socks off. I think the Bears need to commit more of their finances to other positions than wide receiver 3 right now.
And it makes sense. We have had to chat and throw Tutu Atwell a few times, and a guy like Brandon Cooks. Because the one thing the Bears don't have, especially if Tyler Scott is not the player that me and Dustin were real high on him. Kyle, I know you liked him early, but you need speed on this offense. You need speed. That's the thing that they thought Velus Jones was that guy. It didn't work. So I wouldn't just abandon the idea of getting a guy who can take the top off of defense.
Need it, yeah, you're right.
If Tutu Atwell can just burn, I'm all for it. And if he comes at a cheap price, especially. But Kyle said something numerous times, and I want to address the chat guys with this. Your focus now at that position has to be allowing Rome to blossom into what you believe he's going to be. So like Dustin said, the Keenan Allen thing, it was for comfortability, right, with Caleb Williams. It almost felt win now, but you can't limit Rome's snaps this year, this upcoming season. It's clear to me that Caleb and Rome have a very unique connection. I don't know if it's because he threw the ball with them a few times before they even got drafted, but Rome needs to be on the field majority of the time.
He's gonna be. He's 100% going to be. I think we're all kind of falling in this, like, let's go bargain bin shopping for the wide receiver 3, whether it's a middle round pick on a guy that you think has some upside at the slot position.
Yeah, what they've done with the offensive line. They can do that with the receiver.
Yeah, and actually really put the investment into the offensive line this year.
And to Sean's point real quick, he said that guy was projected to go in the 3rd round. You guys, I just read yesterday that Ian Cunningham is one of the 3 finalists for the Jaguars. So there's a real possibility that he is going to be signing with the Jaguars or traded. I guess I don't even know what you consider traded because he's still in a contract with the Bears. But.
Well, no, it would be a signing, but they would have to compensate for taking him from the team. And because he's a minority candidate, like they'll get that extra compensation moving into that position. So it really comes down to his minority status that gets the Bears the compensatory picks in that situation. And I read today he's in the top 5 candidates I read today. So I mean, like it's a possibility.
Sean's saying something here, guys, that I've been doing kind of under the radar in my own time, looking at players who are in free agency currently who have played for a team in which one of the coaches recently hired to this staff was coaching a year ago. You know what I mean? A Tim Patrick who played for Ben Johnson. Was the receiver that you like that Declan Doyle coached in Denver? Are there players in free agency that were with one of these coaches formerly? Those are probably going to be the guys who are first looked at because we know this. These assistant coaches that like the Ben Johnsons hire, they're always in their ear like, hey, I worked with he's solid. He comes to work.
Hardworking dude. You can rely on him. Declan Doyle was the tight ends coach for the Broncos, so I really don't want any of his former players that he coached. No, I'm good on all of that. I'd rather have Cole Kmet than.
Well, and you guys, how many of these we see? So many of these like Lab McConkey, Ricky Pearsall, Demario Douglas. We see these players becoming more and more available in the draft. I mean, it seems like Wes Welker, Julian Edelman, those guys changed the NFL. This position, the slot receiver position, is becoming more prominent. It's because those routes, they have so much more availability in the middle of the field. I think you can go get one of those type of guys in the 2nd round of the NFL draft if you think it's worth taking a receiver like that in the 2nd round. I certainly think there's going to be some available. But yeah, I mean. Who's that kid on the Giants? Not who plays? Not obviously not. Malik Neighbors. What's that?
Oh, Hyatt.
No. The kid, the really small guy. Is that his name? Robinson.
Yeah, that's him.
Yeah, that guy.
What up, Philip? How you doing?
These guys are becoming more prominent. They're easier to find than they were 10 years ago. I think
there is that player that you're talking about, Kyle. The
Wan'Dale Robinson, right? That's his name.
Yeah, Wan'Dale Robinson. If you want to go high, if you think a receiver, like if you want to draft a quality receiver with a like 2nd round pick, I think he might possibly fall to the bottom of the 1st. Xavier Restrepo is that guy, that Cooper Kupp, Julian, the guy that you're talking about, that grinder, that guy who just works hard to get open and you can always rely will catch the ball. Xavier Restrepo out of Miami is probably my favorite receiver in this draft besides the Teteroas. You know, I mean, the Luther Burdens, the guys who are all.
He's your favorite slot receiver. He's a slot receiver. He's not a boundary receiver. So, like, yeah, he could fit into that role pretty well if you have your boundaries already taken care of with DJ Moore and Rome. And again, in this conversation, we're kind of just assuming that because of the price tag, the Bears are moving on from Keenan Allen. Like, that's not going to be a marriage that lasts very long here in Chicago, which is unfortunate because Keenan made some big plays for the Bears this season and hell of a locker room coach by all accounts, great leader. But I mean, the results really weren't there, and the amount of money you got to spend on these high-level receivers is just too much considering all the other holes the Bears do have to fill. And speaking of that, guys, real quick first, Sean Lugo, thank you, bud. We had Philip join us. Darius is here. Elizabeth. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us. Hit that like button. Plank, by the way, jumped in. Plank is always with us. Great dude. Appreciate him. So, I mean, the thumbnail has the culture changed in Chicago. And I mean, I don't think we're going to know that until we start seeing what they actually do with the players they add. Like you were saying, Brandon, are they bringing in hardworking guys, accountable guys, leadership guys? That's going to change their culture. Are the coaches those same types of dudes? It seems like they are, but we're not going to know until they start holding players accountable and practicing on the field. But like, if you're filling holes, we're talking about holes that need to be filled. What's the most important in your mind that the Bears, like the first thing the Bears need to do, like the first move they need to make, what's the position they need to address first and foremost, guys?
Offensive line.
I would love to say left tackle, Dustin, but
left tackle.
You're so weak in the interior of the offensive line. You almost have to go get you got to get a blue chip guard or you got to get somebody on the interior line who makes the two guys next to him better, because their interior offensive line is clearly their weakest link. When teams are scheming the Bears, when they're watching film for a week, they are telling their players, this is where I told you, but remember, I think it was week 2, I said, everybody watched week 1's tape of Coleman Shelton and thought, you're licking your chops, right? I mean, that guy is literally he might have the brains to play the position, but you could.
Well, that's the window. It's March 12th officially.
The tampering period is March.
You could just run through him. We saw linebackers just run him over. And Caleb, Ryan Poles has preached this a lot, guys. The defensive tackle is the closest player to the quarterback. So you got to have an interior offensive line. Or
if there's no pocket to step up into, Caleb is ultimately fucked.
Jalen Carter made Mahomes feel that all day in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and if the Bears expect to be competitive within the next couple of years, they're going to run into the Philadelphia Eagles and that defensive line. They're at some point in the playoffs, those two teams are going to meet again, like they just did in 2018 with the double doink and all that. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Brandon. They certainly have to address the interior of the offensive line. I would just say that, for me in particular, I just think that the 3 most important positions in the NFL right now are left tackle, center, and quarterback. For me, I guess it depends on which.
Defensive end is the second most important position in football.
Well, I think left tackle. I think whichever tackle guards your quarterback's blind side, to me personally, is the most important position. Because if Caleb Williams ends up tearing his ACL and Tyson Bagent comes in to play the rest of the season, guys, they're not going to have a winning season. They're not going to be a very good team. They're going to be an average to below average football team. So protecting Caleb Williams, to me, is the most important thing that the Bears need to focus on this offseason. I mean, the Bears finally did it and went and found their quarterback. I think he's going to be a franchise quarterback for the Chicago Bears for a long time. I think he's going to break all the records. He's going to be the first really good quarterback the Bears have ever had in the history of the Chicago Bears. Now you have to focus on protecting him, right? You cannot get, if Caleb Williams gets hit 68 times again, he's probably going to have to deal with some injuries at some point, right? We saw it in that Detroit game where he was hit by Jack Campbell on the sideline. We thought maybe he was that. We were like all kind of like holding our breath, right? Like, oh no,
that was on Caleb. That was on Caleb.
But I mean, even the blindside hits he took all season, the constant, like the fact that the ball is snapped and immediately somebody's in his face. You have to focus on protecting Caleb Williams. Not even for the development of Caleb Williams. Obviously, that's important, and he needs to be able to be comfortable back there to get better, and for the game to slow down a little bit. But even just for the injury purposes, right, guys? I mean, we've seen how many times have we seen quarterbacks are getting hurt a lot in the NFL. We haven't had a quarterback play an entire season since 2009 until last season with Caleb Williams. But eventually those hits will start to take their tolls. So for me personally, left tackle would be the most important position just because of Caleb Williams is right-handed and that's his blind side. And then, I'd say after that, Brandon, center for sure, because the center can help with a lot. It's not just protection. The center is the one who calls out when he thinks linebackers are blitzing, audibles, so on and so forth. You need a guy there who knows what he's doing, knows what he's talking about, and a guy who's seen all these defensive schemes time and time again.
The left tackle is going to be the most important spot on the offensive line. The offensive line needs to work as a unit. So, the Bears got to really figure out how to get some guys that are going to find some consistency together. And you're not making all these changes throughout the season, because that's what's going to really protect Caleb Williams, guys, is the whole offensive line, not just the left tackle. Now, the left tackle is very important. I would say defensive end is the second most important position in football. If I'm just judging team to team, like on a general basis for this Bears team, offensive line is going to be the most important for sure.
Yeah, so
and you can draft. I did throw this out to you guys, and I'm curious if we can talk about it here. If you draft a guy like Kelvin Banks or Will Campbell, I don't care about what everyone's talking about, that they're going to move to guard. I think these guys have shown that they can play left tackle at the highest levels in college football. And if you draft them at 10, it's to play left tackle. Now, what about Braxton Jones moving over to that left guard? Can we see a situation where that works, to where you're not having to then invest money into as much money into the guards? You still got to get a guard. You still got to get a center. You got to replace multiple guys along that interior. But if you draft a Kelvin Banks or a Will Campbell and move Braxton Jones to guard, Can we see that working and save the Bears a little money? Because Jones is under contract, and he's a hell of a mover when it comes to pulling and moving people.
I mean, it all depends, man. So I said this to Brennan today. I think the defensive line is just as important to winning as the offensive line. When building a team, the offensive line should come first. And the reason I say that is just because all the success is ultimately going to fall on Caleb Williams' shoulders, how good he is in the NFL. But, I mean, here's the problem is, I haven't done it. I need to listen to some of the experts and what they say about these guys because, Peter Skoronski, Peter Skoronski was one of the best tackles in college football, and they felt the need to move him to guard. Is that like the end case scenario for these guys, or are the Bears going to be like, hey, listen, man, short arms, not a big deal. We'll work around it. This guy could be a left tackle in the NFL. If they believe that, and they believe one of these guys is good enough to be a top 10 left tackle in football for the next 10 years, yes, 100%. That's the guy you should be targeting in the draft.
Will Campbell allowed 5 pressures in like 600 snaps.
Yeah. I'm
at the left tackle position.
You guys know me, man. You guys know I've been preaching. First of all, offensive line. Second of all, left tackle because it's just not a position you could afford in free agency. Left tackles get way too much money because it's such an important position. If you can get a left tackle in the draft on a rookie contract for the next 5 years with a 5th-year option, that's 100% what the Bears should be focusing on. No doubt about it. Not even a question.
Can Braxton Jones play guard? Is that an experiment you'd be willing to try to salvage him?
Yeah, I think it's something. I mean, you want to have some insurance there. You could absolutely let him play, and Ben Johnson. These guys will be able to. Roshar will be able to identify. Let him play in that position through training camp and preseason and see how he handles it. What really bothers me, guys, is our top 10 right tackle. It's just completely off the table that Darnell Wright could ever possibly move to the most important position on our line. And you can draft the Will Campbell to play right tackle, but there's no adversity with this guy. I don't understand. Every player that's taken at right tackle is taken in the NFL at right tackle to eventually prominently be the guy who's on the left side of the line.
That's not necessarily true. I've been an advocate for this, but it's not necessarily true. Especially not lately in the NFL. You look
and then Joe Alt was drafted at left and moved to right, so it can work 2 ways. But they've never even humored this, and it bothers me. I don't understand. Is he just?
Well, they might just like the
stigmatism. Why can he? I don't get it, man. It just doesn't make sense.
They might just feel comfortable with him at right tackle, and that's the position he played. That's the position he was best at when he was playing in college. So they might just say, hey, you know what? Instead of shuffling all these guys around, like you said, Will Campbell played left tackle. Instead of bringing him here and moving him to position he's never played before, he's not comfortable at.
Well, you do that with Braxton. He's never been a guard.
Address these positions one at a time, and the Bears need to focus on the both guard or left tackles positions, which they already addressed with Darnell Wright. Go get your left tackle, and then sign a center in free agency or find one in the draft. But I mean, those to me are the 3 most important positions for the Chicago Bears until they're now. Obviously, like I said, I agree with Dustin. The defensive line is just as important when it comes to winning football games because you have to pressure the opposing quarterback. You have to make them uncomfortable. But if your quarterback,
it's get after the other quarterback. 100%. That's how you win football.
But if Caleb Williams is not comfortable, he's going to hit a lot. You're not going to score a lot of points. You're not going to win a lot of games. But yeah, I mean, the Bears have ignored these positions for how long now, guys? Look at the last 20 years of Chicago Bears. It has not been very successful. The offensive line to me is the most important. You go look at all those teams in the playoffs this year, they're all ranked in the top 10 on offensive lines. Every single one of them. Every single one of those teams was ranked in the top 10 on offensive lines this season. I just think right now, left tackle, because of the how much you have to spend on left tackles in free agency, how much it handicaps your team, the Bears should be focusing on finding a left tackle in the draft. Now, if you guys, I agree. If you guys say that none of those guys are worth the 10th pick in the draft, sure, I'm fine with trading back to 13, 14, adding another 3rd, 4th round pick and drafting them there. But if you
I don't want to I want to touch on that because I do not want to trade back. I think that there's a very limited amount of blue chip guys in this draft, and the Bears need to stay where they are to get one of them.
Well, how many blue chip tackles
12.
do you think there are?
There's 12
tackles, just tackles.
2.
So yeah, I mean the Bears. If the Bears want if they find a guy they like, say it's Will Campbell. So that's the guy they like. You do everything in your power to go get Will Campbell, and you shore up the left side of the offensive line 100%. And I'm all for moving Braxton Jones to guard if they think that that's something he can realistically do.
Well, in regards to what you said, if you draft the left tackle, you find a center in free agency, you find a solid guard, and Jones is still under contract, don't you almost have to try this guy at guard?
That's kind of my point. It's like you have him under this controlled deal still. You got one more year. You don't have to spend that money because you're spending it already. Give it a shot and see if he can salvage his career. I think Braxton Jones is at his best when he's pulling, when he's a lead blocker on a run play. Honestly, that's when I've seen Braxton Jones be at his best. And the guards do that a lot in the NFL, especially in a zone run offense. So, I mean, I would love to see it.
And everybody in the
chat with a head full of steam.
We can all attest for this. Even the guys in the chat, we've all watched this team. Braxton Jones gets beat most often on the outside. He is blown by on the outs. He's not fast enough for these guys with finesse, these quick guys, these quick pass edge rushers. He can't get to those guys off the snap. So maybe if you have somebody next to Braxton where he's only playing the inside, that's his weakness. That is his weakness. If you ask me, Braxton Jones' greatest weakness is getting off the snap on a fast edge rusher.
He's slow out of his
setting the edge. He can't do it.
Yeah, so I mean, if there's something salvageable there, I think it's worth looking into. Bearski says right here, you've gotten enough value from Braxton already, and I tend to agree with this, honestly. Like, it's just a thought exercise I'm having because it's like the Bears have so many needs to address in my mind that I kind of want to see where you could potentially get away with doing something on the cheap, but at the same time, like, we don't want that to be the offensive line again this year. So if Braxton Jones is done, maybe it's time to move on, time to upgrade.
Like Bearski, it's just that the problem is that's the weak side. That's the problem is that that's his blind side. Caleb Williams has no idea when those hits are coming. That left tackle has to be a wall. He has to be the guy who sets the tone for the offensive line. He's the guy that's going to be protecting Caleb Williams, and Caleb Williams just has to trust that nobody's coming from that side of the offensive line. Braxton Jones, to me, is just not that guy, guys. And that's nothing against Braxton Jones. I think he's been a great value for a fifth-round pick, right? You couldn't ask for more for a fifth-round pick than we've got.
Guys, real quick. Real Takes Over Fake Debates has joined us. Bearski
have you guys ever seen that before?
Us. No, and there was another one. There was another one that I saw. Cino 3000. Yeah, or Chino 3000. What up, guys? Thanks for joining. That like button.
Thanks for joining for Chicago Sports.
I do want to say this, guys, really quick. It is speculated that Braxton Jones will be ready by the beginning of the 2025 campaign.
But there's no way to know for sure.
No, and he is under contract, so if you don't want to move him to guard, he will very much be their second string left tackle, right? He's going to be your depth.
Well, swing tackle.
He's play the position.
Listen, when it comes to a lot of people in the chat are throwing out, what are you doing at 10? Real Take says Chargers drafted Joe Alt high and it worked out. Obviously, Joe Alt was a generational left tackle talent in my mind, and he can play both sides. He will
get moved back to left tackle.
Yes, 100%. But he's a very physically talented dude,
really good left
huge
tackle.
Dude. Strong dude. I mean, listen, if that guy's available, and there's no Joe Alt in this draft, I don't think. I mean, Kelvin Banks is great, and so is Will Campbell, but they are not on the level of Joe Alt. And I don't want to draft one of those guys to move them to guard. I want them to play tackle for me if I'm drafting them at 10. That's what I need.
I'm not saying you got to fall in love with Josh Simmons, but it certainly can't be a name you forget. Because remember, guys, before he got hurt, and I know the injury is destructive, it's disastrous, but before that injury, he was projected to be one of the best left tackles coming out of the draft for the last 10 years. I mean, he was just like not just like Joe Alt. Joe Alt is in an echelon of his own, but Josh Simmons was, by all accounts, a brick wall that was one of the best quarterback protectors in college football. And that injury obviously derailed that, and it sticks for him. It sucks to see such a young kid go through that. But
he's still going to go in the first round, Kyle.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, if the Bears decide, for some reason Kelvin Banks and Will Campbell are gone at 10, and that's your solution, if they like him enough, man, then draft him. I mean,
if Kelvin Banks and Will Campbell are gone at 10, Kyle, I think you're looking at Mason Graham being available for you.
Or Kenneth Grant.
Well, Kenneth Grant is going to be a late first. That's a trade back scenario. I would much rather have Mason Graham.
Don't be surprised at all if the Bears trade back from 10. I mean, I'm not saying I want them to, but don't be surprised at all if that happens. That would not surprise me. Listen, I'm not saying I love it, but like you said, there's just not a ton of blue chip talent in this draft. So if the Bears are like, hey, let's go get
one at 10.
10 players instead of 5.
Well, and also
I could see them doing that.
In last year's draft, you were still getting blue chip talent. You honestly, Cooper DeJean was drafted in the second round.
He should have been drafted in the top 15.
This draft, you're done. There's no Cooper DeJean beyond the 15th pick of this draft. I believe that's how kind of weak this draft class.
I would be much more open to trading up than
Yeah.
trading back.
You guys, we're gonna see guys who are taken in the second or third round who end up being studs. It's possible to predict. There's no way to know who's going to be the best players in the NFL. Like Puka Nacua is a top 5 receiver in the NFL when healthy. He was drafted in the 4th round. I mean, this happens every single year. You see it every single year. The Bears just have to perfect their scouting. I mean, hopefully Ben Johnson came here. Hopefully brought a couple scouts with him, I would hope. And these guys get better at finding talent late in the draft. But yeah, I mean, Dustin, I'm not disagreeing with you. If you got to go get somebody at 10 who you think is a game changer, a guy who comes in here and makes an immediate impact for your football team, I'm all for it. I don't want it to be running back. It's just me personally, guys. I just don't think the Bears are in a position right now where they can afford to draft a running back at number 10. Maybe next year, if the Bears are like in the top 20, then they love a running back there. Go get them, a guy who you think can change.
Top 10 running back. This class is phenomenal.
That's the thing. The running back. Again, I'll just keep saying it. Quinshon Judkins, I think, is the best running back in this draft. Not a lot of people agree with me, but I would love to get him in the second or third round.
It sounds to me like Caleb Johnson is the guy he wants. I mean, we've heard this 5 times now in the last 2 weeks that Ben Johnson has mentioned Caleb Johnson's name. I mean, he's certainly not keeping it close.
Real quick, before we move to that, I just want to say, I think you got to take offensive line. Unless one of those defensive linemen, Mason Graham, or somehow miraculously Abdul Carter fell to you. I think Mikael Williams is a decent option at 10 if you're the Bears, but I don't think you move back. I think you got to take the best player available, and hopefully it's a left tackle. And I'm willing to move Braxton Jones to left guard, and then you go sign or right guard even, and you go sign Trey Smith, and you sign Dahlman or Kelly, and then you have fixed your offensive line.
You definitely have to have an insurance
that running
plan.
back you would draft in the second round.
You definitely have to have an insurance plan for Braxton Jones. Like if you end up moving him to guard and he's a disaster, then you're in trouble. So you definitely have to have a guy like Matt Pryor on the team for sure, right? No doubt about it. But yeah, I said it. I have no problem moving Braxton Jones to guard. We saw the Eagles do that with Becton. I mean, that's exactly what they did with him. That's why he's 370-pound guard, because he was supposed to be a tackle.
He was a bust at left tackle for the Jets.
And he's held his own, man. He's held his own. I mean, the guy is a good guard in the NFL. Listen, is he the top of the class? No, absolutely not. But he does his job. And that's all you can ask for.
Let's say we do fix that O-line in whatever capacity, however you go about it, whatever decisions you make. There's going to be a lot that we're just all speculating on. Just to be clear, we all know that. I mean, I have no idea what the Bears are going to do, but do you draft a running back in that with one of your second round picks? Is that a must? Is that a must-have with one of those picks for this Ben Johnson offense?
I think for Ben Johnson it is, yes. I think there's other offenses where I would say no, but for Ben Johnson's offense in particular, yeah, I think that's absolutely necessity to him. I think that's kind of like for his offense, it's kind of like the three technique for Matt Eberflus, right? Like I think Ben Johnson needs that running back you can rely on who can get you those gritty yards, and right now the Bears just don't have it, guys. They don't, and it stinks because Dave Montgomery was on this team, and the Bears probably could have extended him for pretty cheap, but. You know what? Yeah, it's in the past. It is what it is. The Bears need to go get that guy who can be a 3-down back, a guy who can get those tough yards, a guy who can score from the 2-yard line, almost guaranteed. And I think you're going to see them draft a guy like that in the 2025 draft for sure.
I do want to
Does it have to be a second-round pick? Probably not. But I would like to see them. If they like one of those top guys, then go get them. Go get one of those top guys.
Shout out to Chicago Sports Podcast. We're going to be on there later tonight. Me and Brandon Trax, thanks for joining us. Great content over there all the time. Please check it out. Brandon, what were you going to say, bud?
I'm hearing a lot, and let's forget about where the running back where you want to take a running back. I'm hearing a lot of Ashton Genty, and I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. That is not the style of running back that Ben Johnson has said that he's looking for. I just want to say he is a speed burst.
Well, he can do everything.
He's 5'9".
He can be both those guys.
He's 5'9", 215 pounds, and his speed comes in bursts. He's broken a lot of tackles. I agree with you, but I also think that he played some pretty pathetic defenses in college. I don't think he's breaking 32 tackles in a game in the NFL.
Was he like 50 yards away from breaking Barry Sanders' record? I mean, the guy had an amazing.
Yeah, Gianti reminds me of the Bijan Robinson, the Saquon Barkley type. I think he can kind of do whatever you ask him to do. I think he can catch the ball. I think he can run through between the tackles. I think he can run to the outside. I think he's kind of a jack of all trades kind of guy. I mean, he's going to be one of the best running backs in the NFL.
Did you see a Boise State running back being drafted and being like nowhere near the potential you thought he had?
I mean, I guess it depends on where he's drafted. If he's drafted to a team with no offensive line,
who torched a Notre Dame defense, doesn't that make you feel a little better about his pro potential?
I fucking love Quinshon Judkins, man. I love him.
And he destroyed the best.
I'll tell you,
college football.
All of them. I think they're all going to be good players in the NFL. I trust Ben Johnson. If Ben Johnson wants Caleb Johnson, if that's the guy he thinks that would fit this offense the best, I trust him 100%.
That's what I think he wants.
Then go get that guy. If that's the guy you think fits this Bears offense that you're going to run with the skill set you have here, with the roster you have here, then go get that guy, Ben. I trust you have to trust Ben Johnson. Yeah.
Bearski thought Ben Johnson's wiping the playbook clean and doing what's best for what we have. I think he is, but I think there's a certain way he wants to do it, and he's going to need a few certain types of players to do it. Most importantly, on the offensive line to start before we do anything. That's why I wanted to get that out of the way before we start talking about running backs, because the offensive line needs to be fixed first. But obviously, he's going to need to add some players that kind of fit a mold of what he wants to do. Dennis Moody says he would rather trade back and draft Hampton in the late first. Again, I am not trading back, guys. I am going to get one of these top 10 players in this draft, and I'm standing pat. If I do anything, I'm trading up.
Yeah, and Dustin, if somebody makes a mistake, you might end up with one of the top 5, 6, 7 players. I agree, man.
Giving that up like I did with Jalen Carter. Yeah. What's up, Brandon?
I haven't heard a whole lot of guys. There's a lot of players that I hear a lot of the guys in this chat pitching, and all like since the Bears season ended, I've heard a lot of these guys are projected late first round. I don't want to trade back or trade up with my 10th pick. I want to take the best player that's available for me there. Why do you not maybe take a second rounder and your 5th and trade back into the 1st?
Well, guys, we have heard
guy that you have conviction about.
Well, we have heard before, and I'm not saying Jackson. You guys, I'm not saying I agree with it or disagree with it. I'm not advocating for it, but we've heard Ryan Poles talk about the drafts in which there is not a lot of blue chip talent. You go get more guys who can contribute to the team. The drafts where there are a lot of blue chip talent, then you want to stay or move up and get closest to the top as you can to draft that type of talent. But if he believes that this draft is a bunch of guys who can contribute, but nobody who's going to like change your culture and win games for you, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he trades back and adds a couple more picks. I'm not saying he should. I'm saying
that would be so Poles, dude.
I wouldn't be surprised. I really
want to get this out because this is an interesting comparison. Because Gianti does everything. Darius thinks he's Emmitt Smith with more speed. That's quite the praise. Insane praise.
That is quite the praise.
He also says Judkins ran behind the best O-line in the country. Gianti is not. And Gianti ran rampant through the number 1 team in the country in Oregon. Yeah, and Oregon got ran through by Ohio State, right? Isn't that what happened?
And Emmitt Smith played for Florida when they were like one of the best programs.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's a lofty comparison. That shows how highly Darius thinks of Gianti. And if you think that, if the Bears were to think that highly of him, then that's something you really got to consider at that pick. And again, the trading back and hoping that your guy's there, and potentially, like you said, Kyle, what if one of those really good guys falls to 10, like Jalen Carter fell to 9, and I was heartbroken when they traded back out of the opportunity to draft him. The Bears need guys like that, instant impact players that will change their team, that will change the identity of their team, and will change the culture of this team, which is what we're talking about, right? Like, you need guys like that. So I'm staying at the very least.
I'm fine with it, man. If the Bears say, hey, we're staying at 10 and we're drafting Will Campbell, that's our guy, I will cheer. I will clap.
Hi, Tiana. Thanks for joining us. Hit that like button.
I will be all for it, man. I'm not. I know I've sat in these rooms, you guys. You know, I'm at River Street usually during the draft, so I hear the collective response from the Bears draft picks. I hear the ohs or the yay. I hear it all. I see it all. If the Bears draft an offensive tackle at 10, I think people will be clapping and cheering. And I don't think anybody's going to be upset about that. We've ignored these positions, left tackle, center guard, for 10 years. It hasn't done the Bears any favor. It's time to address this situation. I mean, it's not good. You have a franchise quarterback. Keep him safe. Keep him. I
like this question here, Brandon. I'm gonna toss it to you. Where do you guys see Abdul Carter getting picked?
Top 2, 1 or 2.
Yeah, top 2.
Yeah, if the Titans trade out of that pick, it'll be a team trading up for a quarterback, and then you got the Browns right behind there. They're going to be getting rid of Garrett potentially, right? So like they would need to replace that.
That's where I would put him. Especially if they trade Garrett.
If they trade Garrett, it's a no-brainer, but he could fall to 3 or 4 potentially. I mean, I think he's the best player in this draft. He should
by a lot.
Yeah,
I really believe that.
I think a lot of people think he's the best player.
Tiers above any player in the
Yeah, I think that's the consensus, right? So, like, if I'm the Titans and I'm not going to draft a quarterback, trading back out of that and passing up on the potential to draft Abdul Carter, I don't know that I'd be able to do that. I think I take the best player. It's kind of the same thought process I have for the Bears. Like, I don't want to trade back if I can get the best player in the draft, you know.
You saw the Browns do with Myles Garrett, right? I mean, they could have traded back to a team that was a quarterback needy team, but they didn't.
The Bears fan base seems pretty divided on Myles Garrett. You either hate the idea of trading away capital, or you love the idea that a guy like Myles Garrett is available and you do anything to get him. It would cost you a lot more to get Abdul Carter. So I want to hear from the people who say,
yeah, but he's 21.
Would you do it? Would you trade 3 first? What is it going to take for you to get to that pick to get him? Would you do it? Is it too much, no matter what it is?
I mean, Brendan, the difference is one of them's got 10 years left of football left in them, and one is minus 10 years.
Worst case scenario, 10 years. Worst case scenario, you're hoping for 12 to 15 years out of a guy like that.
Myles Garrett's got maybe 3 really dominant years left in him.
You're hoping for 4 to 6. You're hoping for 4 to 6 in the best.
2 first rounders.
Many 36-year-old defensive ends
are you going for
destroying the NFL?
Well, we've seen it. It's happened. Reggie White did it. Reggie White did it.
If you have to give away 2 firsts and 2 seconds to get up to draft Abdul Carter.
No, absolutely not. Not with the many holes the Bears have. No, absolutely not. That's way too much. Man.
Listen, if we're talking about the Myles Garrett thing, I think there's precedent for deals like that happening previously. And you're talking about your first round pick basically being the equivalent of what Garrett is worth. And then you're going to have to throw in some extra to pry him from the Browns. That's something I would do. If I'm throwing out a first and a second, one of my 2 seconds, or if I'm throwing out a first and a third for Myles Garrett, I'm doing it immediately because I believe that makes the Bears a contender. And I think Ryan Poles would believe that too. And he's a guy who's going to want a deal, and you're going to have to overpay for him like you did for Montez Sweat, who had 5.5 sacks last season. Like, this pass rush for the Bears is not good enough, guys, just plain and simple. And you have to improve it one way or the other, whether that's trading for a guy, whether that's signing a guy, drafting a guy. But there's a lot of unknown there. You know what you're getting in a guy like Myles Garrett or even a guy like Trey Hendrickson. So what does that become worth to you if you want to apply pressure to the quarterback? And that we just established that's one of the 2 most important things in football, protecting and applying pressure. So how much is that worth to you?
For me personally, I would like to see them. If Myles Garrett costs you 3 or more draft picks, I'd like to see them go after a guy like Josh Sweat in free agency and try to build this team through the draft. That would be I love Myles Garrett. I think he is a culture changer. I think he makes this team a lot better. But I think with Dennis Allen and how aggressive he is and the fact that he has gotten after quarterbacks with not that much talent. I mean, if you look at that Saints offensive line or defensive line, there was never anybody on that defensive line that's considered top 5 in the NFL, but they still applied a lot of pressure to the quarterback. They had a good defense there. For me personally, guys, I'd like to see him address that position on a relatively, I want to say cheap deal, but kind of somewhere in the middle. Like if you can get Josh Sweat here for $15-16 million a year, if you could do that, I'd like to see that.
I don't think you're doing that after the game he had in the Super Bowl.
To trade away 3 first round draft or 3 draft picks and then give a guy $19 million this year and $26 next year, you better be ready to win in the next couple of years. I mean, you better think this team could win in 2026.
The fact that the Bears pick is a top 10 pick makes it very valuable. And you're not throwing another first if you're trading for one of these guys. And if the Bears did, they'd be stupid.
Yeah, I guess it just depends on what the Cleveland Brown thinks they can get. I mean, I don't know. I've heard him say
they can screw off with what they think they should get. I'm not giving them 2 first-round picks for. Again, the age is a consideration in this. You have to. I mean,
you're not going to get the best of Myles Garrett. You're going to get the end of his career. That's what you're getting. You're not getting Myles Garrett when he was 25 years old. Myles Garrett is gone.
But let me make this point real quick, guys. Myles Garrett at at the tail end of his career is better than most people in the primes of their career. That's
it's also like
something to remember.
People bring up, you guys, it's also the situation, people bring up like the fact that Montez Sweat had 5.5 sacks, but they say a guy who had 10 or 11 sacks is really good and Montez Sweat's not. Then why wouldn't you go get Trey Hendrickson? Because Myles Garrett had 14.5 sacks and Trey Hendrickson had 17. So why, if each one of those tiny little sacks means that much to you, then go get the guy who had the most sacks in the NFL back to back.
The guy has 6 straight seasons before turning 30 of 12 plus sacks. He's the first player in NFL history.
Yeah, Micah Parsons has done the same thing. And he's 25 years old.
No one else has done it.
No one else has done it.
Myles Garrett is the only one that's done it.
Mike Parsons has had over double-digit sacks his entire career with missing games, by the way. He's missed games in almost every season.
I'm just telling you that stat.
He's 25
Myles
years old.
Garrett is the only holder of that stat. He's the only person that's done it in NFL history.
And like I said, you guys, you're not trading for what he did. You're trading for what he's going to do.
It's a combination of both. You project the future by looking at the past. You have to consider a lot of things.
But if you project the future, you have to consider the fact that 30 and older get hurt more. I mean, we know that. That's not like me. I'm not making this up for the sake of the argument. This is a true statistical fact. People above the age of 30 get hurt more often than people in their mid-20s. That's just
Brandon, what do you think? But
well, I mean, why are you talking about the potential of getting injured in the future when you just said Micah Parsons hasn't played a full year? Micah Parsons' history of injury bothers me more than
that would be something that's something I consider if I traded for Micah Parsons. The fact that Micah Parsons was missed 2 games last year, 3. So it's nothing crazy. It's not like he's tearing ACLs. He's just.
I'm going to say this so I can stop beating this dead horse. Speaking of horses, that one almost just killed me an hour ago. If he comes at the right price, man. If Poles feels like
what's the right price to you?
I can spend this. If Poles thinks I'm okay. If Poles says to them, hey, listen, I want this guy. I know you want a lot, but I got to remind you, he's 30 years old. And they come back with, all right, this is what we want. If the price is right, as far as Ryan Poles, if Ryan Poles has conviction in this decision and he knows what he's willing to spend prior to even calling them, do it. Absolutely. I would love Myles Garrett to be. Guys, you ever see the play where Myles Garrett before the snap is just walking from one side of the line to the next and the offensive line keeps shifting to make sure that they cover Myles Garrett? They get a delay of fucking game.
If the Bears
they're so terrified.
Real quick, Kyle, you asked the question, what is the price you're willing to pay? I'll say this. I would do my number 10 pick and my worst second round pick to get Myles Garrett.
Let me ask you guys this: if the Bears,
you would have to do that.
Just out of curiosity, if the Bears had drafted Jared Verse last year, would you guys want the Bears to trade for Myles Garrett?
No.
Why would we? That doesn't make any sense.
I'm just asking. So, like, if you think that the Bears are capable of drafting a really good defensive end,
who's that guy this year, Kyle?
What about next year? What about next year? You can't fix all the holes in one offseason.
But who's that guy this year? Who would you draft at 10?
What if he's here? That's what I'm saying. What if Jared Verse is in the draft next year and the Bears are at 13? And now you have $26 million and you're missing your second round pick next year because you gave it away for Myles Garrett, who's 31 years old at this point, and you no longer have the you can't go get that Jared Verse at 16 because you're like, well, we have too much money dedicated to defensive ends. We can't go get a defensive end at 13 and say he's the best defensive end in the draft and he's still there at 13. I mean,
that's at that point you're just kind of that. Well, you have to do what you have to ride with what you already did. You made the decision to get Myles Garrett, and your defensive ends positions should be pretty well sealed up at that point to where you're not concerned about that defensive end at 13. I'm concerned about the defensive ends in this draft right now and how they could impact this Bears.
People also forget
if there's a guy like that. And I don't see one. I don't see one in this draft now.
People also often forget that the first thing Ryan Poles said when he was signed by the Chicago Bears is, I don't sign for or trade old or injured. That's the first thing that came out of his mouth. I don't sign or trade for old or injured.
I want to ask you,
not old either, man.
I want to ask you this. We're talking about the age of Myles Garrett and the potential of injury. Dustin just said the 10th overall pick and the latter of the second rounders. And I'm seeing Sean, and this every time I bring up Myles Garrett, this is thrown at me. Micah Parsons. What do you think Micah Parsons is going to cost? At least I said this. If you want Myles Garrett, you're going in with the price and you're not folding. Ryan Poles does this a lot. He will not let a team get over on him. That's the one thing Ryan Poles, I'm very proud of as a GM. He's never been like, I guess I'll just give you everything you like. The Sweat contract, the Sweat thing was a little bit close to that.
The Fields thing was
Micah Parsons is a 2 first rounders, a second rounder, and what do you think this guy's going to cost?
And you're going to pay him $36 million a year. And you're going to pay him 30.
What do you think Micah Parsons?
Okay, Kyle. Well, you guys give me this. Give me this. All right, Dustin, I want to hear this from you. The extension you signed to Myles Garrett will start when he's 32 years old, going into his 33 age season. What's the extension? How much?
I mean, I'd pay him $30 million a year.
At 33 years old, you're giving him $30 million a year.
Yeah, and I would backload the contract to where he gets all of his guaranteed money up front, and I can move on from it. Teams do this all the time.
There's no way I'm giving Myles Garrett $30 million a year at 33 years old.
That's what he's going to get.
There's no way I'm doing that. That's fine. Then I'm out. Then I'm out. If that's what he's going to get, then I'm out. I'm not.
Who's the guy that is worth paying that to? Who's the guy that's worth paying that?
22-year-old Myles Garrett.
Huh?
A 22-year-old Myles
Garrett. That's not an option. Who's the guy?
Micah Parsons at 26 should get $30 million a year.
Micah Parsons is going to get 36 to 40 million.
Okay, at least you got 5 more years of prime Micah Parsons. At least you got 5 more years of it.
Micah Parsons, you and Sean have said on the show that you would trade for a guy that age. Micah Parsons, what do you think Micah Parsons?
I wouldn't trade anything, guys. I don't think the Bears are in a position to be trading away draft capital. I've said this 1,000 times on the show. I don't think any draft capital should be traded away from the Chicago Bears. I'm fine with them trading for more draft capital. I'm fine if they're like, hey, does somebody want Kevin Byard for a 4th round pick? That wouldn't crush my heart and soul. I'd be like, hey, at least we got that 4th round pick. Maybe we could draft the safety like Kevin Byard. But if I'm the Bears, I am not trading away draft capital.
What about the potential?
No, absolutely not. By any means necessary. The Detroit Lions were built through the draft. The Philadelphia Eagles were built through the draft. All these teams you see that are dominating the NFL were built through the draft.
The Eagles did a lot in free agency, Kyle.
The Eagles had 11 starters on defense in the Super Bowl. 11 were drafted.
All right, we should.
Vaughn was not drafted by them.
Okay, sorry. 10 of 11 were drafted. Vaughn wasn't a Myles Garrett free agent. He cost them like $8 million per year.
I just find it hard to reconcile the fact that the Bears have all this cap space in the future, and it's not worth paying a guy that can instantly impact your team. If you're willing to pay Parsons and you don't even know if he's available, if a guy like Garrett is available, listen, we'll always agree to disagree on this topic. It's fun to talk about because listen, Brandon, don't get discouraged by the conversation. It's not going to go anywhere, but at least everyone in the chat is hearing different sides of this conversation.
If you guys like him, I think they should trade for him. I don't think you're stupid. I'm not like, man, you guys are so dumb. If that's what you guys think, I'm fine. For me personally, I don't trade away draft capital if I'm the Bears. That's just me.
Okay,
just me.
It doesn't make sense. You just said I wouldn't trade away draft capital.
No,
what if
I would not.
Okay, hold on. You're immediately. I don't know if you're talking just regards to veteran players in the NFL. What if you like a guy in the first round, an edge rusher, and you trade your 2 second-rounders to get back into the first and take that guy? You wouldn't. I wouldn't do that. I would try to find a good defensive end in the second round because they're there, because we've seen it. It's been proven. Justin didn't like Braden Fisk last year, Brandon. That guy went in the late first round, early second round. He's amazing. He's a game changer, man. He changes games. You're evaluating
he literally changes games.
To you as opposed to going and get. That's my point. If you like Landon Jackson in the bottom of the first round and you have 2 second-rounders that you can, or a second and a third, and you can trade in the first to get this guy, don't you do that?
No, I'm not trading any draft.
Guys, Bearski's saying this right here. The draft is a shit show. I'm in agreement with this. This is one of the worst drafts that we've seen in years coming into the NFL. So it's like if you're going to sell off draft picks in a draft, this is the draft that I want to do it. If I can get a known commodity, future Hall of Famer for draft picks that would get me a crapshoot in a draft where there's 10 to 12 guys that are actually legitimate first round grades, I'm going to do that because my versus reward is very much mitigated if I do that. That's my thought process. Real quick, Kyle, does that thought process make sense to you?
Does it make sense? Could I see that scenario working out? Yes. But for me personally, I've gone back and looked at the defensive players traded for in the NFL history. It's never worked out here. And I'll give you guys an example because Sean just brought up the Bears salary cap situation on the bottom of the screen there. Sean, we all just complained about Ryan Pohl's first 2 years on the Chicago Bears because of how bad they were. The reason they were so bad was because of the loss of draft capital and the dead money owed to Khalil Mack, who was by all accounts one of the best defensive end / linebackers in the NFL. That guy was brought here to get 15 sacks a year. He was hurt because he was old, and we paid him way too much money and gave up way too much draft capital to get him. I don't want to go through the same thing. If I traded my first and second for Myles Garrett, and Myles Garrett somehow tears his ACL in week 2 because he's 30 years old.
You could say that about any player, though, Kyle.
Yeah, but the likelihood goes up.
It's a violent game.
Dustin, since we've been talking about the fact that 30-year-olds are injured more, you've never actually admitted that. You've never said to us, I agree, 30-year-olds are more prone to be injured than 22.
Things start to break down for sure, but Myles Garrett is not a normal person. Miles
Especially for
Garrett is
guys,
a physical
especially
specimen.
for guys who have played every single
hold on, guys.
snap.
The chat,
Especially for guys who have played a lot of football.
We passed this. What Bearsky says here, guys, and thank you, Paul, for the comment. If you feel you have a guy that will pan out, you like somebody in this draft, and you need to trade up to do it, you do it because
Okay, guys, and we will
this is
all
why you
agree
do it.
to disagree.
This is why
First
you
of
do
all,
it. Because
Let
you
him make his
cannot,
point, Kyle, please.
you cannot assess the draft based on what falls in your lap. Like we really like, I really like Ashton Genty, but if I wait around for the second pick, one of those other guys could be good. If you want Genty, you go fucking get him.
You guys, but we've seen teams do the opposite. It's working. The Eagles wait for people to fall in the lap. They got Kobe Dean in like the 30th pick. The Rams got Puka Nacua in the 4th round. The Rams got Jared Verse at what, 16? They got Brandon Fisk at what, 35?
I wanted the Bears to take Jared Verse at 9, Kyle.
But what if Verse didn't fall?
It works.
What if he didn't?
The Rams were like, hey, we're not trading up to get anybody. We'll wait for him to come, and we'll take him. Don't give away draft capital. We will find somebody to make a difference on this team.
The Rams literally coined the term "fuck them picks," Kyle.
The Rams
that's
literally
a bad
have
example.
drafted.
Like they've traded away 3 years of drafts to get a Super Bowl.
For a quarterback.
You have
a quarterback.
to
That's
get
a
a Super
different
Bowl.
conversation.
No, but you have the quarterback. The Bears have the quarterback.
If you guys were asking me right now, will the Bears, would you trade 3 first-round picks for Patrick Mahomes? Yes. Yes, I would. 100%.
The Bears are in a different situation than the Rams were in. If you're trading to get yourself to a Super Bowl, you do what you have to do to win.
You guys, they're not going to a Super Bowl because of Myles Garrett. There's too many holes, guys. There's too many holes. If the Bears were one player away from the Super Bowl, yes, you guys are not considering this situation. You're just saying Myles Garrett's an amazing player. Any team in the NFL could trade for him tomorrow and win a Super Bowl. Should the Raiders trade for Myles Garrett? And are they going to win a Super Bowl in the next 2 years if they trade for Myles Garrett? No, they're not.
Listen, Detroit Lions.
If the Detroit Lions trade for Myles Garrett, do they have a much better chance of winning Super Bowl? Yes, 100%. The percentage points goes up drastically. It's not the same for the Bears.
The Bears
are not a win-now team.
In the playoffs. They're not a win-now drastically team. If they trade for Garrett too.
They're not a win-now team, guys. The Bears need to add as many players to this roster as they possibly can. Trading away draft capital is not going to help them accomplish that goal. They have 34 players under contract.
What if Myles Garrett gets cheap? Like, what if you could trade your 10th overall pick and sweat for Myles Garrett?
If you trade for Myles Garrett, what 4 positions that you traded draft capital away for and the money you can't use in free agency now, where do you go for undrafted free agents and garbage trash?
You can make that argument for if you sign Trey Smith, that's money you're not able to spend on other positions.
But Dustin, you're not losing draft capital. You're not losing draft capital. You can do one or the other, but you can't do both. Because the Bears have 34 players under contract, guys. 34. They are 4 players shy of the NFL record for the least amount of players under contract going into an NFL season. I mean, I'd
be interested to know how many teams have been there before. It's not like that's.
This is out of the norm. It's not the norm for Bears to have teams to have 34 players under contract going into the season, guys. That is not normality. That usually does not happen. The reason that happened is because the Ryan Post has signed so many one-year contracts for players just to fill in space while he was trying to build this team through the draft. That's why they have so many spots to fill, because all these contracts are one-year contracts.
What this passion, Kyle, boils down to is that we all want the Bears to be successful.
Yeah,
we all want the Bears to be competitive as soon as possible. We in Chicago, guys, and I just want to make this greater point. Me and Kyle were talking about it before we got on. Chicago teams have been screwing their fans over for years now. It's the worst time to be a Chicago fan that I can remember. I don't know if this is hyperbole, guys. Maybe in the chat they can let me know if I'm just over analyzing, but we deserve better than what we're getting. We want to see our teams be competitive. We're in the 3rd biggest market in the country, and our teams consistently suck and make excuses. And then they've trained us as fans to make excuses for them too. And that's a very shitty place to be. So this passion, we all have an idea of how the Bears can be competitive. Our ideas might differ, but at the end of the day, what we're ultimately trying to get to is the Bears need to be competitive as soon as possible. They just hired the whiz kid coach. They've got all this great coaching staff in place. They need to get great players in place. And however they do it, I'm good with it. I want to see competitive football in Chicago. I don't think we fucking deserve that.
I don't think anybody who wants Myles Garrett or Micah Parsons is stupid. I think that guy makes your team better, and it's smart to add a guy like that. You also have to consider everything in the situation, right? Do you guys want to be giving 33-year-old Myles Garrett $30 million at the same time you're paying Caleb Williams $350 million the same exact offseason? That's crazy, guys. That's crazy, guys.
No, but you're not doing that.
That's
though.
crazy.
Let's get into this.
That's the same offseason, Dustin. That's the same offseason. The same offseason Myles Garrett
comes off the books. When his contract comes off the books, Caleb's gets done. That's what happens.
No, but your extension for Myles Garrett would start the same year you extend Caleb Williams. Those would be the same offseason. 2 years from now, Caleb Williams has to be extended. There's 2 years left on Myles Garrett's contract. That extension would start the same year as Caleb Williams' extension.
You're going to redo Myles Garrett's contract altogether.
You're $30 million a year, and you're getting Caleb Williams is going to get 45.
You're going to front load it, and Caleb Williams is going to be extended in 3 years, not 2 years. It'll be 3 years when that happens. You have him on a rookie contract for 4 more years.
Yeah, but you want to extend him before the last year of his 4th year contract. You want to extend. That's
correct. So you still have 3 more years, Kyle. You still have 3 more years.
You want to extend him before the 4th year. Before the 4th year, like 100%. The Chiefs did with Patrick Mahomes. Okay, so he's already had a year. So he's got 2 left, which Myles Garrett has left. 2 years.
That's 3 years.
So they would
4. Yes. So you have 3 more years.
No, you have 2 more years because he's already played a year. So you said extend him before the 4th year of his rookie contract.
I'm okay one way or the other.
Just the same thing the Chiefs did. You did the same thing the Chiefs did with Patrick Mahomes.
What the Chiefs also did was get very aggressive spending wise when they had Mahomes on a rookie contract. And that helped them be competitive quickly with a young quarterback. The Seahawks did the same thing.
But you didn't see the Chiefs extend Chris Jones in the same season
while you had the quarterback on the rookie contract, Kyle.
Yeah, but you didn't see the Chiefs extend Chris Jones the same year they extended Patrick Mahomes. They extended Patrick Mahomes and Patrick Mahomes only that season because they gave him $550 million.
Yeah, Darius says, who says
you guys, if you're a Bears fan, now that you have a quarterback that you believe can win you multiple championships, you have to think about the future as well, guys. Not just the immediate future. Like 5, 6, 7 years from now, can the Bears be in the playoffs consistently for the next 10 years? Like the Packers, the Patriots, the Chiefs, can they be that team? Those teams do that by being very, 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 very smart with their money and sometimes very frugal. Like, look at the Chiefs, guys. Their offensive line, their offense isn't loaded with $1 million talent. They traded Tyreek Hill away. They didn't extend him. They traded him away for draft.
But they also won a Super Bowl with him, Kyle. They also won.
I understand that, but they won a Super Bowl without him. I mean, listen.
So there's multiple ways you can go about it. Is my point. But you have to. This cannot be argued to me, Brandon. Like when you have your rookie quarterback on a rookie deal, that's when you go spend the money on other positions.
Yes, so you be extending. But you're saying that as if the Bears would not extend Myles Garrett because they would be extended at the same time, guys.
No. I am. If I trade for Garrett, I'm getting a deal done that day.
But the extension still starts the same year as Caleb. Even though he
wants to be the highest paid. Kyle, he wants to be the highest paid defensive end in football as quickly as possible.
Yes,
he's seen other guys go well beyond.
Justin, what I'm saying is, if they traded for Garrett today and he signed an extension today, that extension would still start the same year that Caleb Williams is getting paid. Even though it was signed today, it would still start the same offseason. What
I'm saying is you're not extending off of that contract. I'm going to get you a new 3-year deal. I'm going to front load the shit out of it.
Why would you give him a new 3-year deal? Why would you just give him the $19 million this year? Why would you give him more?
Because it's more beneficial for your cap, Kyle. It's more beneficial for your cap and how those things line up that you're talking about.
I just don't understand what you guys are saying. I mean, you wouldn't give him a raise this year. You would make him play for $19 million because that's a fucking amazing deal.
No, I would give him the raise immediately and front load the contract. I would redo his deal completely. Yes, that's what I'm saying. I would pay him more this year.
How long of an extension are you talking for Myles Garrett? How long would you want him to be?
I'll give him a 3-year deal, man.
On top of this deal, 3 years? So 5 years total?
No. I'm 3 years. I can get out from underneath this contract. That's what I don't
think Myles Garrett's going to sign for
if it's enough guaranteed money. Yes, he 100%.
For 1 year, no, absolutely not. He wants his retirement contract, guys. He's 30 years old. He wants to be like, hey, I need to have a contract that locks me in the NFL for the next 8 years. That's what he wants. That's what Myles Garrett's looking for.
Nobody's got a contract that locks them into the NFL for 8 years, Kyle. That doesn't exist.
We've seen
Those
contracts signed at
contracts
30
don't
years
exist.
old that were 6-7 years. We've seen
Yeah,
that.
yeah, but they're front loaded, Kyle, and the team has no commitment after 3 years.
Listen, either way, Myles Garrett's going to get, Dustin, you said it yourself, $30-35 million a year. The same year that contract that last would kick in the same year as Caleb Williams. Oh yeah, and by the way, Roma Dunze also has to get paid, guys, unless you don't want him here, unless you want to let him walk in free agency.
Well,
he also
listen,
needs to get paid the same year. The
Lord willing, these guys all, and Darius said it. Who says they'll extend? We got to see Caleb Williams perform for the entirety of this rookie deal. We got to see Roma Dunze perform for the entirety of his rookie deal. If everything goes great, hopefully that's a great problem to have where you have to find a way to pay.
If you're not extending Caleb Williams, then you made the wrong pick. Jaden Daniels should have been the pick.
Yeah, but
no, I think Jared Verse should have been the pick at number 9. I thought that on draft day.
The franchise, who I do believe will be extended and will be a good player, the franchise quarterback the Bears drafted is now you have to change the way you're looking at this. He's in his second season. You have to be aggressive
100%.
now. And I'm not talking about Myles Garrett. I'm talking about in general. This team has got
to.
But
if you sign Myles Garrett to the 2 years and then let him walk, sure, 100%. Then he would be gone by the time you're paying Caleb Williams.
By all standards in the NFL, Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles need to make something happen in the next 3 years. Like before Caleb's owed money, they need to have like an NFC championship game that they lose by a field goal. And you got to be as close to a Super Bowl as possible. Or guess what? Ben Johnson, Ryan Poles, and probably Caleb Williams.
Yes, but you want most of those premium players that would be contributing to that championship. You want most of those players to be drafted because then they're cheap.
Aggressive.
They're cheap. You can't pay a left tackle, a defensive end, a wide receiver. You can't pay all those guys. They've already paid Jalen Johnson, and they've already paid Jalen Johnson, DJ Moore. So those guys are going to be here regardless.
Kyle, the draft is an inexact science. You're going to have more misses.
You got to be the Eagles and the Chiefs and the Rams, guys. You got to. You have
for
to.
Sure. There's a lot of luck involved with those things. The right guys falling to you. The Bears being willing to trade away the best player in the draft. Like those things have to happen.
I think if you walked up to the Eagles GM and said, "Hey, do you think you're really good or really lucky?" I think he'd probably say, "I think I'm really good at drafting and evaluating. I think that's what I am. I think that's what gives our team the best."
Kyle, if a GM is hitting 300 in the draft, they're doing pretty damn good by those standards
of that. You need to be that team.
So it's going to be a combination of both. It's going to be free. You got to be aggressive in free agency. You got to be aggressive in the draft. You 100% have to win trades as well.
Free agency.
You have to be open to whatever. You don't know what situations are going to come up, Kyle.
How are the Eagles aggressive in free agency? When were they aggressive in free agency?
They just signed Saquon Barkley. Huge deal at running
guys,
back.
that was like we need one more guy to win a championship. That's what I'm talking about.
Brown, man.
Like you
there's
guys,
more that goes into it than just
the Lions. The Lions could go make a very, very aggressive move in free agency and expect to win a Super Bowl. The Bears cannot do that. They don't have the team to do that. Right? Am I wrong?
Listen, I kind of disagree with you because, like I've said before, we just saw the Washington Commanders, without making a lot of huge additions, go from worst in their division to the NFC Championship.
Where did all the money in free agency go to the Washington Commanders? To the offensive line.
And I have
the offensive line.
Not
to Myles Garrett.
Myles Garrett, me wanting Myles Garrett to me saying don't address the offensive line.
Well, you guys, but I'm saying that's a perfect example, Dustin. Washington Commanders traded away their 2 defensive ends, added the offensive line, and made it to an NFC Championship game.
Yeah, but that was because they had done bad drafting. They drafted too much at a position that they weren't going to be able to afford, and then when they realized it, they just we got to have a fire sale. I'm not suggesting that the Bears should
Eagles
do
ran
that.
7 touchdowns.
You have to admit, they traded away the 2 defensive ends that probably everybody in the NFL is like. Washington fans were like, "Why aren't we extending these guys? Why aren't we extending Chase Young or Montez Sweat? Why are we trading away?" They signed the offensive line, got a quarterback, and they made it to an NFC Championship game, guys.
That defense lost their season. They got 7.
They went to an NFC Championship game. Define lost a season.
They were bad all year, Kyle. You know that. The Washington defense was bad all year. It was their Achilles heel. 100%.
Yeah, you guys, the Super Bowl against the Patriots and Eagles was like 48-45. Sometimes you just got to outscore the other team, man. That's what's most important is protecting your quarterback and making sure he can score points. That's what's most important.
The Eagles were the best defense in football.
I want to say, hold on real quick before we jump, because we should move off this. But real quick, I think
we should. Yeah,
you're talking about the draft being an inexact science, which it is.
Of course.
When you're paying
Post free
players,
agency. Ask Khalil
when
Mack.
you're paying players, that's when the science becomes more accurate. And guess who's paid right behind Myles Garrett on the list of all edge rushers? Who's the fourth highest contract?
Montez
Sweat. You cannot pay shit players big money.
That's where the Bears are in trouble.
Montez Sweat is not a shit player. Yeah, let's just move on, guys.
Listen, I want to touch on this on a couple things from the chat, guys. Daniel Jeffries, good conversation. I'm good with it. I think we're having fun here. Daniel Jeffries says Ian Cunningham is the front runner for the Jacks GM. We might be getting another third-round pick. We would be getting 2 third-round picks in consecutive years. That would be awesome, right? Please stop making those teams. I don't know what that's referring to, Darius, if you got any more. Sean says Skins signed a ton of line help. Phil says rumor has it Detroit is actually going to bid for Myles Garrett. They really should. Every team that is capable of taking them on. Listen,
needs to be on the Bills.
I just sent you guys. Well, the Bills they have more cap coming up. They're gonna get out of that Von Miller thing.
Egregious.
So no, they would.
They're gonna get out of what?
Huh?
They're gonna get out of what?
The Von Miller contract. Yes. But it's not like Von Miller didn't make an impact for that team, and he was a free agent.
Yeah, but they didn't win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, because they played the Chiefs. That's like saying the Jazz didn't win a championship. You're playing Michael Jordan. Like
Patrick Mahomes.
You're in the wrong era, you know. But I did read an article by Barnwell on ESPN. I sent it to you guys that said Chicago is the third most attractive team to get Myles Garrett. The first in terms of who should go for him in his mind, and the number one team was the Washington Commanders, and that scares the shit out of me. It's almost worth going after Myles Garrett so these other NFC teams don't get him, especially one in your division.
Are a year ahead of the Bears, yeah.
But like
thinking about luxury.
Think about Myles Garrett and Aiden Hutchinson on the Lions and Caleb Williams playing against those guys with the offensive line we have currently constructed. Yeah. That is a scary thought.
And then you're not going to win the Super Bowl for 2 years. Who cares? The Lions beat for 2 years anyway.
It doesn't matter. Caleb Williams alive, though, is what I'm saying. Kyle, just don't let him get killed.
Yeah, which means you need a really good offensive line.
Howie Rosen has made plenty of mistakes. Yes, every GM has 100%.
Of course. Everybody in the world has made plenty of mistakes.
MS says, I have a buddy. It says to Darius, I have a buddy who's an Eagles fan, and in the past, he and others were calling for his head, but the Eagles organization was patient. Yeah, 100%. And that's rare that you see that in the NFL these days. That teams stick with these guys that are having rough patches. They tend to want to move on quicker than they used to. 100%. But I mean, listen,
a lot of things going Ryan Poles' way in this conversation today. A lot.
Listen, Ryan Poles has the shot. He better shoot it. Yeah, for sure. The Commanders didn't sign no big name O lineman. No, they did not. But they did sign offensive
three. They didn't sign big names. They signed 3 names.
It's something that's been talked about before.
Foster, what up, bro? Shout out to Bear Country Podcast. What up?
If Ian Cunningham takes the Jacksonville job, Ryan Poles needs to call about Trayvon Walker. That needs to be done. I would offer both those second-round picks for the former first overall pick in the draft who's had back-to-back 10-plus sack seasons. He's the 5th-ranked edge rusher against the run. His win rate expectancy should go up between 5 to 10%, which will put him above the league average. He's very young. He's 24 years old. You need to go – the Jaguars cannot pay this guy.
Let me ask you guys a question.
No doubt about it.
I've talked to you guys a lot on this podcast.
I like that thought, Brandon. I just want to Trayvon Walker is a damn good defensive end, and I think his prime is in front of him. This is an interesting thing you've thrown out there that I would be 100% for. I know, Kyle, you don't want to move on from the draft capital. I get that. We understand that. But Brandon's just
not until the Bears have an offensive line. No.
Trayvon,
once they have an offensive line, yeah, and you feel like you're close to winning a championship.
It is an interesting.
I'm fine moving on from draft capital. If you feel like you're one player away from a championship and you win if you trade for a guy who can do that, fine. But when you have no offensive line,
but you could have a window for a championship next year and that guy not be available.
He's 24 years old.
You need
to be here for 5 years.
Real quick, just to I just want to make this point. You could have that window for that championship next year, Kyle, but you don't have that guy to go after. So it's like, do you get the guy now and then open your window, or do you wait until that window opens and hope someone's available? You know what I'm saying?
But you see championship. The Bears aren't going to win a championship next year, guys. They're not going to win a championship next year. It's not going to happen.
In the example you said, your window opens next year. I'm just saying you don't control when these guys become available, Kyle. So getting a guy like that on your team will help to open that window. That's really
But he'll be gone by the time you're competing for a championship, guys. That's what I'm saying. He'll be gone. He won't be here.
What was your question, Kyle?
We just brought up
what do you guys think is more important, offensive line or defensive line? Just out of curiosity, which is more important to the Chicago Bears right now? Building an offensive line or building a defensive line? The Chicago Bears in 2025, they need
Brandon, you go ahead.
They're both egregiously bad.
Okay, which is more important, I guess I should say, to the Chicago Bears in 2025? Offensive line or comment. Everybody in the comments, please comment. What is more important to the 2025 Chicago Bears? Defensive end or offensive line?
I think the trenches have to get better all around, and you're going to address both. You're not going to pick one or the other.
Okay, but that's not the question I'm asking you. The question I'm asking you is which is more important to the 2025
Kyle, let him
Chicago
answer the
Bears?
question. Let him answer the question. He's trying to answer the question.
Pick one or the other, I should say.
I think that's not going to happen. You're going to address both.
Okay, so that's all you have to say.
You're not going to pick your personal preference, Brandon. Your personal preference.
Where should you spend more capital? Probably the offensive line, but you cannot neglect the defensive line because I don't believe Sweat is the player he is. I don't hang my hat on hope for Javon Dexter to take some miraculous jump forward. It's just not going to happen, guys. The hope thing, the Bears fans need to stop this. This guy could. If anything you say to me precedes this could happen, I don't want to hear it. I don't.
Yeah, Darius, with all due respect, man, Bears fans have been saying that for a long time, man.
They need help.
We're not that far away. It's been a long 20 years I've been listening to the Bears aren't that far away. 20 years now, guys. 2018, where the Bears went to the playoffs.
Kyle,
they're like, we're not that far away. Then they rebuilt the whole entire team.
But the Commanders,
entire team.
You just said the Commanders, who just put together their offensive line, who have a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterback, went to an NFC championship game. We're now Caleb Williams in year 2. Ben Johnson's the guy, right? I was told all offseason, Ben Johnson's the guy. He's the guy.
Can I answer your question?
He called this team win now. He called this team win now.
Yes, and that's got to be the goal. Like I was saying earlier, I want this team to start being competitive as quickly as possible, like this year. If I'm answering your question, Kyle, I'm going to say it does depend on what's available and how I address and fix those things. The offensive line is going to be more important to me in terms of protecting my future, my most valuable asset in Caleb Williams, protecting the future of my franchise. But as Brandon said, I can't neglect either. But if I'm going into an offseason where defensive line is more easily attainable to address and fix, that can impact my quarterback too.
Okay,
let me finish. If I am getting after the quarterback, if I am creating turnovers, if I am creating better field position for my quarterback, I am making life easier on him in a way still. I'm going to address the things that are in front of me because the situation could be different. The people available to me one year will not be the same people available to me the next year. Offensive line is going to be my most important thing, but I got to use my assets smartly.
If Ryan Poles came out to the fans and said, guys, we cannot address both lines this offseason. It's not possible. We don't have the money. We don't have the draft. We cannot do it. We cannot do it. It's just not possible. We cannot address both lines this offseason. Which line are you addressing this offseason? He said you can only pick one. I have to fix one of them. I can't fix both of them. Which one is more important this year, 2025, to the development of Caleb Williams? Which line is more important?
If any GM ever came out and said that, he should be slapped, first of all.
Well, I mean, realistic, you guys, it's realistic. There's a salary cap. There's a salary cap. You can't address the entire team and the entire in one offseason.
Yeah, but I got to pick one or the other. Like, no, how about you impact both? How about you impact both?
But if you go get Myles Garrett, you're going to take away a lot of impact on that offensive line.
I would ask myself, if I'm
you're losing your first round pick and $20 million.
If I would ask myself, if I'm the GM, which trench unit has better pieces available between the draft and free agency? Are the offensive linemen available better, or are the defensive linemen available? That's the one I would spend more capital.
Thank you, Foster. So listen to this, Foster. This is exactly what I've been trying to say.
On the unit that has better potential players available.
Look at what Foster here says. This, I agree with you 100%, Foster. Fix the O-line. The D was okay-ish enough to look solid for 10 games or so after getting Montez. A step back past season, but has talent. Remember, they gave up less than 20 points 10 games in a row. Got to score 24, 27 points a game, and D with a solid plus coordinator. Do you agree with that? Do you agree that in order to win games in the NFL, you have to be able to score 27, 30 points a game, somewhere in there, consistently?
Well, no, 27 points a game is a good number for any offense in the NFL right now.
So the Bears last year averaged, 18, 17?
Yes, Yes,
17?
18 was the number, I
So
believe.
until they fix the problems on offense, even if their defense is amazing, like one of the best defenses in the NFL, they still are liable to lose games 10-0, 10-3. Like they did
I'm not
Seattle last year.
sacrificing one for the other. I'm
Like they did Seattle
to
last year.
address both.
Didn't the
But-
Bengals?
They were not okayish in the last 10
Justin,
games.
you
of
do
this
agree
season.
that your
not.
the big chunk of your salary and the big chunk of your draft capital should go to the offensive line.
Yeah, but Foster, hold on. Didn't the Bengals and Bills score like the most 30-point games this year and lose those games? The Bengals didn't even go.
And Joe Burrow went to a Super Bowl being the
but-
most stacked quarterback in the NFL. I mean, like
they both had more wins than the Bears. Both
There's
those
all
teams
kinds of
had more
different
wins than the Bears.
playoffs, scoring one of the highest points per average this year.
Yeah, and they both had more wins than the Bears. You guys said you want immediate success, then you got to score points. You saw it, right? Both those teams almost. The Bengals were one play out of the playoffs. If the Bengals beat the Ravens once, they're in. And the Bills went to the AFC Championship game, Brennan.
Darius
they gave themselves a chance.
Darius says we can address both units easily. If the GM is saying he can only address one, then fire him. I said slap him.
Define easily.
Fire, slap him, and then fire him.
I think the Bengals lost the most 30-point scored game.
I think it's very easy to sit on your couch and be an NFL GM. I think it's very, very easy to sit on your couch and be an NFL GM. But when you have all the salary sitting in front of you and you're looking at, we got to give this guy $21 million next year, got to give this guy $19 million next year, and then you're looking at the free agents and what they're asking for. You look at Trey Smith, he's like, I want a 4-year, $100 million contract to play guard in the NFL. If you're doing that, if you're assessing all that stuff, guys, it's much tougher when it's actually in the face of adversity. You're the guy doing it than sitting on your couch being like, you know what they could do? They could trade this for this guy, draft this guy, do this, and all that. It's not going to play out like that. It's not. None of it's going to play out like that.
Yeah, but it's also not going to play out like you can only address one. You're only addressing one side of the trenches.
No, but I think if the Bears
for any team.
I think if the Bears want 3 offensive linemen who can contribute this season, they need to sign 4. Do you agree with that? If they want 3 who can contribute this season, you got to go get 4.
More than 4.
Because one of them's not going to work out.
Starters.
I'm signing 2. I'm signing two big offensive linemen, like 2 big free agents.
And you need 4, so then you're drafting
I'm
one at 10.
I'm going to do middling deals for a couple of other guys, minimum deals, rotation guys, and I'm going to draft 2 guys.
Yeah,
I'm going to draft 2 guys
at 10, right?
Huh?
Probably left tackle. You probably want a left tackle.
I've already said that. Yes, I'll take Kelvin Banks.
So guys, that's a lot of. If you're talking about the 10th pick and 2 big blue chip type players in free agency, you guys,
but you'll
that's
still
a
have
lot of money
for a defensive end. You still need a defensive end to apply pressure on the other team's quarterback, and you'll still have money in free agency, and you'll still have 2 second-round picks that you can use towards that as well.
But you can't.
You can address both.
You can't draft a tackle at 10 if you go trade your 10th pick for Myles Garrett.
Yeah, but then you would use your 2. You would use your 2nd round pick and your 3rd round pick towards offensive linemen for offensive linemen. No, listen. At the worst case scenario in that situation, Kyle, you're keeping Braxton Jones for 1 more year. That becomes more likely.
See, to me, Caleb Williams is too important to do that. But that's just me, guys.
Listen, I've been on record.
To disagree.
Left tackle and center are the 2 most important positions on the offensive line, and the Bears need to replace both of theirs.
The 2 most important positions on the team besides quarterback.
Listen, we'll disagree there. I think defensive end is the 2nd most important position in football, behind quarterback.
Okay, well, let me ask you a question.
If you're pressuring the quarterback, you have a better chance of winning football games.
Right, but you saw the way Patrick Mahomes performed in the first 3 quarters of the Super Bowl, right? Because he couldn't do anything because the offensive line couldn't protect him against that Eagles.
Well, there's 2 sides of that coin, Kyle, because the defensive line is applying
100%. But the Eagles could have won scoring 26 points in that game. Right?
Okay.
They didn't need 40. They just had to outscore the Chiefs. That's it. All they had to do was outscore the Chiefs. They could have won 22 to 23. That's all you have to do.
So if you're winning defensively, then your chances of needing to score less points to win that game, those go up too. So that can be goes up across the board.
If you watch that Super Bowl, if you guys watch that Super Bowl, how many times did Patrick Mahomes get sacked in the Super Bowl?
I think it was 5 or 6.
5.5, 6, right? If he does that, if that happens to him every game, did the odds of Patrick Mahomes suffering a serious injury go up drastically?
Yeah, and the odds of you losing go up drastically too. But again,
if you lose your quarterback,
if that defensive line is applying that pressure, that's a part of that too.
But what's more important, applying pressure or making sure Caleb Williams doesn't tear an ACL?
Hold on.
I think they're
Mahomes,
equally important.
Mahomes was
I think that's crazy. I think to lose your franchise quarterback for an entire season
the way you
is
phrase that
crazy.
question,
Crazy.
the way you phrase that question, I think protecting the quarterback and getting after the quarterback are
What happened when Tom Brady made the playoffs every year? What happened when Tom Brady tore his ACL?
Brandon, listen, we know that the quarterback is going to be the
was
most important
sacked 6 times behind one of the top-ranked offensive lines in the league because the Eagles' defensive line was just
pressure.
just too much.
You guys, if Caleb Williams gets hurt, the season is over. The season's done. I don't care how good your defensive line is. If Caleb Williams gets hurt, the season is over. The season's over. If Tyson Bagent comes in week 3, the season is over.
Sean have this view where you have to sacrifice pressure to get protection.
But you have
to. If Ryan Poles does this,
pressure.
One at a time, please.
Protecting Caleb Williams is more important than pressure, guys. It is. It just is. It's just the NFL. It's a quarterback-driven league. Protecting Caleb Williams.
All right, now Brandon.
Kyle,
that's your point. Brandon, what's your point?
If Ryan Poles sacrifices protection to gain pressure or pressure to gain protection, he should be fired. He should be terminated. And Ben Johnson should think to himself, I made the wrong fucking move coming here. If Ryan Poles goes to Ben Johnson's office and says, I'm going to get you all the protection you need for Caleb Williams, but we're not going to get any pressure at all, then Ben Johnson should say,
then you go get pressure the next year and make sure Caleb Williams is still healthy. That's what you do. That's what you do. Then you make sure Caleb Williams stays healthy. You get pressure, and you go get pressure next year. That's what you do. 100%, that's what you do. If those are your options, make sure Caleb Williams is healthy. That's the goal.
Purple Jesus says draft the best player available. Drafting for need early is a bad idea. Listen, again, I agree with that. The ultimate goal is to win. We want the Bears to win. So, however the Bears can figure that out this offseason remains to be seen. We're all hoping for some big things come free agency and come draft. And hopefully the Bears are putting something much more competitive on the field this year than they have the last 3 years. That's really
agree with Purple Jesus. The problem is the most important key, the biggest key to success for the Chicago Bears in winning is Caleb Williams. That is not debatable. There is no debate. Caleb Williams is the most important thing on the Chicago Bears, even over the head coach. He is the most important thing on the Chicago
Bears. But the one thing that you're failing to recognize in this conversation is that as much as you do to protect Caleb Williams, another team is going to do a lot to get after him. So you have to account
if you have an offensive line that prevents them from doing that, you can win the football game.
Yeah, and if you have a defensive line that is better than that offensive line, you can win that football game too.
Maybe. Not if they score 10 and you score 3. You're not going to win that game. We saw it against the Seahawks. The Bears scored 3 points against the Seahawks, guys. They allowed 6. They allowed 6.
The Eagles or
they allowed 6 points and they lost the game.
Did the Eagles or the Commanders build their because they're both good offensive lines this season? Were they built primarily through free agency or the draft? I'm really asking. I don't know the answer to that question.
The Eagles had a combination of both. Mekhi Becton was a free agent. Lane Johnson was a 4th overall pick for them.
They had more of. Is that what you're asking?
More draft or more free agents? Because we talked about the Commanders rebuilding their line. I didn't see them.
They drafted their center. The Commanders spent money in free agency on offensive line.
Yeah.
They spent
the Eagles,
3 guys.
The Eagles have a ton of money in their offensive line. So do the Lions. A ton of money in their offensive line. An absolute ton.
But it's a combination of both in both of those situations. And it always will be, guys. Listen.
And the thing is, the Eagles and Lions.
It's a motto. We want the same thing.
Vernon, both the Eagles and Lions top sackers this year were drafted. Yeah, both the Eagles and Lions, the guy who had the most sacks for them this year, were both draft picks. They were draft picks. Their offensive line is trying to be and have a lot of money in their offensive lines. A lot. There's a lot of money in those offensive lines. A ton.
Well, hopefully the Bears are putting a lot of money into their offensive line this offseason. That's what I agree. We need to protect Caleb.
I don't know what's going to be available in free agency for the offensive line, guys. I think there's a good chance that Drew Dalman is going to be franchise tagged. You're going to let
there's still Kelly
center walk with a rookie with a second-year quarterback. He's actually basically a rookie, right? I mean, he's basically a rookie going into the next season. Atlanta's quarterback is a rookie because he only played 4 games. He only played 4 games last year, so he's going to be basically a rookie. Well, you got to protect him.
We don't know what's going to happen. That's the ultimate conclusion here. We're doing a lot of speculating, and we're going to wrap this up, guys. I just want to finish on the fact that, again, just to reiterate, the people in the chat, whether or not it's Chris Foster, who doesn't like Caleb Williams. He feels that way because he feels like the Bears would be better if they had gone another direction. I don't agree with it, but he feels that way because of that. Kyle does not feel like trading for Myles Garrett would make this team more competitive. I do.
No, I
And
didn't
that's
say
the
that.
point.
I think it would make them more competitive. I just don't think it's the right move for the Chicago Bears. That's all.
Okay. Well, I would do it with regardless. You would prefer to use those draft picks to draft multiple people, and hopefully one or two of them hit out of the 5 that you take, and you're building your team.
Well, not the first 3 rounds. I mean, you should expect those guys to contribute to your team,
Kyle,
right?
Sum it up, please.
Do you agree? Do the first 2 rounds, those guys should be expected to contribute? Name a first or second round pick Ryan Poles has drafted.
100%, but they don't always, Kyle. It's
well,
a
I mean, but
crapshoot.
who is Ryan Poles drafted in the first and second round?
I wasn't trying to get into more debate. I was trying to end the show in summary. I'm not trying to disagree with you right now. I'm trying to say that
you also said Kyle doesn't think adding Myles Garrett will make this team more competitive. When have I ever said that once in my entire life?
Then it was I misspoke, Kyle. My apologies, bud. We okay now to move on?
I'm fine, man.
All right.
Dustin said that protecting Caleb Williams is not going to make this team better in any way, shape, or form.
All right, guys. Love you bunches. This has been a lot of fun. We all want the same thing at the end of the day, which is for the Bears to be competitive and to have something to talk about in terms of a winning team in Chicago. That's what Kyle wants. That's what Brandon wants. That's what you guys all in the chat want. So hopefully we can continue to have these conversations and start to see some things come to fruition, and we see the Bears put together a much better roster going into this season, guys. I appreciate everybody for being here. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. We appreciate y'all for being here. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. We'd just be screaming at each other over the phone through text, probably. Brandon, anything you want to end on here?
No. I think we beat it up pretty good. And like you said, Dustin, we're all gonna disagree, guys. Some of us will agree, some of us will disagree. But with the point is, the Bears need to do something to make both sides of their line improve. And
100%.
And if they don't, we're gonna watch the same Bears team, no matter who's coaching them. We're gonna watch the same Bears team we've watched for the last 2 decades.
Kyle?
Yeah, I agree, man. I mean, this is now 4 years in a row. The Bears quarterback has been sacked over 50 times. At some point, you got to start worrying about the franchise quarterback. That's what every other team in the NFL does. It's time for the Bears to follow suit. 100%. I agree with you 100%.
All right, guys, have a lovely rest of your evening. We'll see you on Wednesday. Kyle and Sean will be back. Me and Brandon will be back on Thursday, and we're always here on Mondays. So we'll see you. Have a great night, Beardown.
PSP, guys.
I'm not doing the fuck Green Bay thing.